Good afternoon, everyone. This is David Stearns from Haley Marketing, and welcome to today's Lunch with Haley webinar. Today is one of our favorite annual events. This is where we get to share some of the observations, lessons, incredible information that we learned at the Staffing Industry Executive Forum. This year we had a real treat. So we had the two of us, myself and Maggie Hinterberger, who were invited to be panelists at the presentation. And as a result of our being panelists, we got to bring some extra people to this year's event. So normally we don't get to bring 5 to the Executive Forum, but this year we did. And that meant we got to go to even more sessions, take more notes. I think Maggie had 20 some odd pages of notes, which we tried to consolidate down for today's webinar. And that's what we're going to do today, is we're going to try to give you highlights of what we saw in Miami at this year's Executive Forum. If you've never been to an Executive Forum, I highly recommend get on SIA's website and sign up for next year's event in Austin, and do it soon before they sell out, and particularly before they sell out of hotel rooms. The Executive Forum is one of the premier events in the industry. A lot of the content, and particularly so this year, is geared towards bigger staffing organizations, but even if you're not a bigger staffing organization, hearing the way these companies think about the future, hearing them talk about their plans is not just enlightening, but inspirational. It gives you an incredible foundation for thinking about your own company's future. And with that said, let's start to get into some of what we're going to discuss today. So we're going to go through the keynote presentations, and we've got some pretty detailed information on the 4 keynotes that we were able to see. We're going to share highlights very quickly. We're consolidating a number of hour-long presentations all down into one slide of a few take-homes for each of us. And then we'll wrap things up with some lessons that we learned. I will forewarn everybody, I don't think we've once done this presentation and finished in an hour because there's so much content. If you have to go before the end, we totally understand. We are recording today's webinar, and the entire recording will be available on lunchwithhaley.com. Should be up and available to listen to sometime early next week. All right, so let's start with the keynotes. And almost every Staffing Executive Forum that I can remember opens up with Barry Asen, the president of Staffing Industry Analysts, giving his sort of state of the industry address. And this year his presentation was entitled Future Forward, and he sort of looked at where we are today and where we're going. First thing that Barry said was that today staffing is at a pinnacle. We are at a bigger size, deeper penetration into the employment market than we've ever been. But then he followed it up by saying, but what got us here won't get us where we need to go. And you're going to see that today as a recurring theme, that the industry is evolving, maybe on the precipice of some major change, not just in the workforce, but in how we service our customers. So where we are today, and I'm going to apologize in advance for those of you who attend lots of Lunch with Haley webinars. You know we like to have big pictures and few words and really talk about what's going on, but the Executive Forum has so much content that we sort of break our own rules, and we have slides that are not so pretty, but are filled with valuable take-home information, and so you'll see lots and lots of that today. So some of the key highlights from where the industry today. Today, the U.S. staffing market has reached $140 billion in annual revenue, and that's just temporary contingent staffing. That is double where it was 20 years ago. The market penetration rate, the percentage of the U.S. workforce that are temps, is over 3%. That's a larger percentage of temporary employees in the workforce ever. Barry pointed out that the industry has become much more strategic, more professional, and definitely more global. This first stat sort of blew me away. Contingent use just a few years ago in 2010 was about 10% of a company's workforce. Today, it's up to about 20%, and large employers are forecasting that within 10 years, a quarter of their workforce will be contingent. So what does that mean? Well, whether you're a big company or a little company, employers are going to have a larger percentage of their workforce that are flexible workers. That's huge opportunity for staffing companies. Another big transition is, a lot of people still, even in 2018, have the perception that staffing is about low-level jobs, that it's all industrial work or maybe some industrial and office work. But today, 60% of revenue is white-collar professional, the biggest segment being IT, and light industrial is now down to 27% of the industry. It's still the second biggest segment, but smaller than all of the professional segments. And this one's also an interesting one, is the U.S. staffing industry is only 1/3 of the global market. Staffing globally has been exploding as businesses are demanding better ways to deal with uncertainties, better ways to manage costs, better ways to deal with regulation. You guys know the benefits of staffing. We just have to make sure every employer understands the benefits of staffing to create more and more opportunity for our industry. And the next stat sort of blew me away. Today, the contingent economy worldwide is estimated at $5 trillion. Now, U.S. staffing market was 140 billion. $5 trillion in contingent work. The biggest chunk of contingent work are independent contractors. 2 trillion, 40% of the world's contingent workers are independent contractors. So what does that mean for you as a staffing company? Well, can you help manage independent contractors? Can you make it easier to find them? Instead of just having W-2 employees, can you have 1099s that you're facilitating the engagements? Are you dealing in states or at the federal level with clients who might be subject to more audits for people that are improperly classified as independent contractors? There's huge opportunities for the staffing industry to capitalize on more of that $2 trillion independent contractor business. The next number also surprised me, that internal temps, companies managing their own temporary workforce, that's $611 billion. That's bigger than the global staffing market. So there are a lot of companies, and it makes no sense to me, but a lot of companies that are still sourcing, screening, hiring, deploying their own temporaries even in 2018, and even more so than are using staffing companies to do it. So we have to educate those people on how we can do it more efficiently, more cost effectively than they can do it on their own. And the last item was SOW, or Statement of Work. It's about the same size as the global staffing industry, but it's $458 billion in project work. For many of the people who are in professional staffing, if you're not already doing project-based work or statement of work agreements, absolutely something to look at to help you deliver more value and create opportunities that go beyond traditional contingent staffing. So what's driving success in the U.S. staffing industry today? First and foremost, it's no secret to anybody on today's call, unemployment is back to near, if not at, record lows. And in a lot of places, unemployment for professionals and college graduates is down below 2%. So your ability to provide access to talent that employers cannot access on their own, maybe to direct hire or direct recruit from competitors, maybe just to have better sourcing channels, maybe just to be smarter about how you can source, is a huge advantage. The second is managing uncertainty. Many of us on today's call, we were there in 2009 and 2010, and we don't want to go back. Neither do our clients. They know that pain, and that's why staffing as a percentage of workforce has gone from 10 to 20 to 25%. If we can do a better job at helping our clients deal with the uncertainties in their business, tying in the next one, while helping reduce their total cost of labor, we're delivering huge value that is pretty much irreplaceable. Ensuring compliance is another big one. For the last several years, this is the first executive forum in 4, 5, 6 years where ACA wasn't the dominant point of discussion, but ensuring compliance with the myriad labor laws that keep getting introduced, particularly in certain states. I know those of our clients who are out in California, boy, you guys always have something tough to deal with, but helping your clients stay in compliance is a huge value and a reason that they continue to use your services and will use more of your services going forward. For the statement of work people, being able to outsource non-core functions, helping businesses do things more efficiently so they can be more productive doing the things they do best. And the last one was an interesting addition that I have not seen in any of SAA's list before, but growing social acceptance. Not surprising, there was a lot of millennial talk at the conference, and the fact that working as a temporary, working as a contingent worker, working in a non-traditional job is much more socially acceptable, and that social acceptance helps improve our access to more talent and improves clients' willingness to work with temporaries. There was always this sort of negative stigma that temps meant less qualified workers. Well, that's not true. Now they represent some of the best people looking for the best jobs, people who want to have more control over their careers. So all of these things, you can look at this list and say, these are the value propositions we need to sell to our clients. Our marketing materials, our website should be built around these values as we both recruit and as we sell. Looking forward, where are you going to create opportunities next? The first one's something that probably everybody does in sales every day, which is anticipating client challenges. But client challenges aren't just temporary help. They're everything related to managing a contingent workforce or managing the workforce in total. So how can you provide additional services to help people better manage their contingent workforce? Can you provide independent contractor compliance? Can you provide onboarding? Can you provide training? Can you provide on-site management? Should you get into the VMS or MSP world? There's so many different ways you can add value by anticipating in your client base what kinds of people challenges are they going to have, and then helping your clients, this is the second bullet, make contingent work more strategic. Don't just use it for fill-ins, be using it as a way to drive out costs, improve productivity, accelerate learning curves for new technologies or new processes, to launch new products, to get into new industries. I mean, there are tons of things that staffing can help a business to do, but a lot of business owners, and particularly small to mid-sized business owners, or even line managers in bigger organizations, they don't know all the strategies of using staffing. So you can help them to see that to create new opportunities to sell. The next one was a huge theme at the conference, the disrupt or be disrupted. So there's a lot of people right now trying to take out the staffing industry or change the staffing industry. You hear about online staffing or the gig economy. The first question Barry asked, and I apologize, I typed this one up and I put what us staffing, but it should say what is staffing, is really understanding the essence of what is the value we provide. Are we an industry that's filled with branches and recruiters? Are we an industry that fills labor demand? Or are we more about way to connect people to work? What's the difference there? Well, the analogy is to think about travel agents versus real estate agents. How do we facilitate the process? If we're just transactional, if we're the travel agent who's booking a flight, we're going to see our industry decline. Even though contingent workforce use will grow, we add less and less value unless we act more like real estate agents. How do we add more value in the process? How do we do things for our clients they can't do for themselves? How do we make it easier to hire, easier to manage, easier to onboard, easier to terminate? How do we make our clients more productive and more profitable? If we define staffing more like real estate agents than travel agents, we won't be disrupted by new technologies. And who are the new technologies and disruptors? Well, some of them are listed on the screen. Google and Google's new Google for Jobs, LinkedIn and all the changes they made in how people have their online resume and how people apply for jobs and how you find talent. Facebook, hopefully everybody knows Facebook now has the ability for you to post jobs. They're getting more sophisticated about how you can apply for jobs. They're partnering with organizations like ZipRecruiter to get more jobs into Facebook and more Facebook jobs found elsewhere. Then there's technologies, artificial intelligence and online staffing. All of these companies, the tech companies, and the technologies they represent have the potential to radically change how work gets done. If you think about taxi cab drivers and Uber, I don't think the taxi industry saw Uber coming. Okay, the staffing industry sees this online staffing companies coming, but what are we doing to get ready? And then there's going to be weird things like Barry mentioned that IKEA bought TaskRabbit. TaskRabbit's an online staffing company that does very small projects. The number one project that was requested on requested on TaskRabbit was assembling IKEA furniture. That's why IKEA bought them. But now IKEA is in the staffing industry. So we're going to have competitions from places we may never have anticipated it. There's a lot of small online staffing companies you've never heard of, but they have big money private equity funding that they can put into growing their business, marketing their business, creating differentiation from traditional staffing. So what you have to look for is, can we create hybrid models, ways to integrate these new technologies, these new types of staffing, online staffing, AI, into our traditional staffing to enhance what we do, not disrupt, displace what we do. Another point that Barry made is that recessions force employers to find ways to drive out cost. In 2009, right after that, there was a revolution in large buyers switching to VMS and then MSP. And I know a lot of you don't like buying or selling your services through those platforms, but those were put in place because there was an opportunity to reduce cost. The next recession will create similar opportunities to reduce cost. How will you respond? Online staffing companies that have 10% markups, that's a different world than traditional staffing companies. Those online staffing companies, they're not doing W-2 employees. Well, some of them are, but most are not. So we have to think about how we'll radically change our business the next downturn so that we become the organization that employers want to work with to help drive out cost in their own business. What are some of the strategies for success? As you look forward, you can look for ways to launch new services to drive down your cost of service. We saw a presentation where one of the big national companies talked about how their number of physical branches had gone down significantly, but their revenue per branch had exploded because they've launched more online staffing services as part of what they're doing in every branch. They've made it complement their existing business. You might partner with low-cost service providers as a way to reduce costs for employers. And maybe that's partnering with an online staffing company or partnering with other technologies that reduce your cost of sourcing or talent assessment. Focusing on niche markets you can own. It's about dividing the staffing pie up in such a way we can get to a market that there are very few direct competitors, maybe based on your specific expertise in the specific geography that you focus on, or the skills that you place, or the problems you know how to solve. You can learn to love technology, AI, chatbots, looking at automating the candidate experience to create a superior experience for candidates or clients. And the more you adopt technology, that gives you a competitive advantage. Or you can learn to move up the value chain. Several companies that were talking about training temporaries to manufacture their own workforce, getting into the world of total talent acquisition where you're managing the entire hiring process for clients, or that statement of work project solutions. So any of these strategies or all of these strategies can be part of your 3 to 5 year roadmap. All right, with that said, we're going to switch gears now, and that's the end of Barry's presentation, and we're going to switch over to Randy Street's presentation.
Thanks, David. So this keynote was by Randy Street. He presented the concept of the A method for hiring. He explained that as a leader, your problem isn't what, it's who. 50% of all hiring decisions are mistakes. An average hiring mistake costs 15% of the person's base salary. So Randy presented the A method of hiring as the solution to these hiring mistakes, which focuses on building a scorecard based around the target or mission of the role and working backward to evaluate what skills and qualifications the individual needs for success in the role. The concept I'll dive into was summarized as the A method, as you can see laid out in the photo on the slide. To create the scorecard and hire effectively, you first determine the essence of the role, which is the target or the mission. Then you outline the outcomes you can expect. And next, you discuss the competencies and culture of the role, including the behaviors, values, and skills you expect and the environment in which they must perform. Next, you want to ask people you know, who are the most talented people you know that I should consider hiring? Referrals are the best way to find qualified talent. And finally, you want to select based on a set of 4 interviews. The first interview is screening, which is the standard phone interview you're familiar with. The second is the who interview. In this interview, you gather the data needed to properly rate the individual based on the scorecard. This is divergent from what you've seen before, which is typically a structured chronological discussion that walks through people's career. Instead, you break their history up into 3 or 4 chapters and review their work history in sections rather than by each individual position. Questions you may ask in this interview can include, What were you hired to do? What accomplishments were you most proud of? What were some of the low points during that job? And who did you work with? From the who interview, you move on to the focused interview. This is in place of the standard behavioral interview and instead focuses on the scorecard items. And finally, you have the reference interview. Ask the candidate who their references are and what they expect these individuals will say about them or their relationships. These questions establish the threat of reference check, which is related to what you will actually ask the references. You can ask questions such as, what was your boss's name? What was it like working with him or her? When I speak with them, what will he or she say were your biggest strengths and development areas back then? And why did you leave that job? So the A method uses sourcing, selecting based on the scorecard to help you make the right hiring decisions. So we can jump to the next slide. Thanks, David. This keynote was presented by Jason Jennings and was one of my favorite sessions from the week. Jennings started the presentation with a quote, "A bad attitude gets a bad result, a good attitude gets a good result, and a great attitude gets a great result." And his presentation on how to get everything done faster and better really backs this up. Jennings shared 4 secrets that allow companies to grow, be faster, and become great. These are purpose, growth, letting go, and good stewardship. Purpose. Great companies that get everything done faster have a purpose built around doing well by doing good. Be bold. This is not what you do for a living, but why you do it. Normally, this fixes a social injustice and gives meaning to people's lives. Also, it normally plays on emotional issues. What it takes to have purpose includes being brief and memorable. It must evoke an emotional response. It should show deep conviction. You should hire only those who buy in and get rid of those who don't buy in. Talk about and celebrate it constantly, and it will become muscle memory. The next secret is growth. Great companies that get everything done faster make growth their guiding principle. Growth as a guiding principle means to attract the right people, engage and keep the right people, grow, get rid of the wrong people, improves the fortunes of families, forces you to stay ahead of your customers, turns suppliers into partners, keeps the attention of investors and owners, makes communities better places, and makes everyone feel part of a winning team. The third secret is letting go. Great companies let go. If you want to be fast, you need to let go of yesterday's breadwinners, the same old, same old. Here he discussed the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and he highlighted how this is stupid and often leads to the law of suckage, in his words, which means that by the time you figure out you suck, you've sucked for a long time. Companies that aren't fast are complacent. Finally, if you want to be fast, you need to let go of conventional wisdom. If you only perform conventional wisdom, you're not going to achieve unconventional results. When you let go, you're better able to deal with change, stay ahead of the competition, and growth and innovation occur naturally. The final secret is good stewardship. Good companies that get everything done faster are led by good stewards without exception. To define stewardship, look at yourself in the mirror and ask, is my life going to be more about me, or is my life going to be more about others? The moment you can put others first, you've joined the ranks of good stewards. So what is a good steward? They are people who share the information. Only old people believe that knowledge is power. People who get it understand that execution is power. They are accessible and keep their hands dirty. They are fearless about growth. They have a fierce sense of urgency. They make everything better for everyone. They are true coaches and mentors, and they are called to serve. These are the secrets that were shared as a way not only to get everything done faster, but to be better and ultimately to become great. With that, I'll turn things over to Brian for the last keynote.
Thanks, Maggie. And this one was at the very end, I believe on Wednesday, and had some really big companies in the room doing a keynote panel on where the future is going. And this one I thought was really impactful because they were talking some very big high-level strategy and where they think the industry is going. So the very first thing is the way everyone is doing business is going to change. This is going from treating new information, it's going to take a mind shift from treating new information as scary to treating it as an opportunity. So things like technology, globalization, AI, they're scary right now, but where is the opportunity going to be in them going forward? Who are you currently partnering with that you're able to succeed in this going forward, and are you in a position to be successful? The general trend for almost everything going forward is convenience. How easy is it for your candidates to apply? How easy is it for your clients to do business with you? When you're going through your candidate experience, I know that's one of our big things we say here is to go through your entire candidate experience from the moment they find you and apply for a job to the point where they get it. What's the steps? Are you really world class in what you do? So how can you make the application process actually easier for your candidates so that they don't want to go somewhere else? And when they are looking for a job, how many interviews, tests, calls, applications do they need to fill out before they're even considered for the job, let alone get the job? So even beyond that, one thing that we've been seeing is that the technology is really impacting how the candidates are applying for a job. People are getting notifications to their phone every single day of jobs that are available, not just from your company, but from the major job aggregators out there too, plus the ones that David mentioned that are disrupting the industry. Google for Jobs is also changing how people are applying for jobs because now they can do search for new jobs near me. And I know that a lot of people aren't going to like this, but Google is starting to require location data be provided. So when it turns to going to Google and making sure your jobs appear there, that's something that is going to be important moving forward and sharing where the client's facility is. This is going to a little bit of what David talked about earlier, and it's all about strengthening relationships that you have with your clients so that as this information becomes public, as the candidate experience gets easier, how are you deepening your relationship with your clients so that you can retain them and continue to grow your own company? And how do you make your company indispensable? Just like convenience, speed is becoming important too. Going from 24 hours to be able to take that order and then eventually place it with a candidate. And what technology do you have in place to actually get this to happen? And the last thing that I found a really interesting stat was shared by one of the larger companies is that they have 10,000 people who sign up for jobs every single day. Only 2% get a job, which means 9,800 candidates every single day fail to get a job even though they try. So their take on it was that the candidate shortage we see and the skill shortage is more of a local phenomenon. And when you look at the more global economy and going across different states, that's where job opportunities really raise up. So what are you doing as a company to help get around that? And then we can actually go to the next one. So this one was John Stepper and with Working Out Loud. And this is one that I really liked. And to get away from the big picture of exactly where the staffing industry is going, this is a little bit more of what you can do on a day-to-day basis to help yourself achieve these really great goals. And I really like this one because it's all about if you're going to do something or you want to do it, say it and find a way to make it happen. The one thing that he really advocated is that you are only 1 to 2 degrees of separation away, people that you might know, connections that you have on LinkedIn or within a local association that are really away from achieving your business goal or getting a new job. So really work those connections and find out what opportunity you have. And to do that, announce what you want to do and see if anyone does come up to offer their assistance. When looking at the 5 steps to his program of Working Out Loud, they were relationships, generosity, visible work, purposeful discovery, and a growth mindset. For relationships, it's trying to access that knowledge that is out there that you know through other people. And it's the idea that you want to contribute to others and they'll contribute back to you. For generosity, it's the idea that when you do contribute and you do give, that you give without expectation, or you give without expecting anything in return. I know that one of the big guys that one of our social media people talk about all the time is Gary Vee, and it's the idea of giving without expectation. And it's that idea that just give as much as you can and you will receive more in the future, but don't expect it now. The next one is visible work, and this is going back to Working Out Loud. Always let people know what you're working on. Let them know what you're striving towards. Purposeful discovery is identify what you want to do. Do what you want to grow. So whatever it is you want to grow your business into a new market, into a new state, into a new industry. Identify what it is and brainstorm every possible way that you can get there. And then go after every one of those ways that you can try and actually achieve that. And the growth mindset is everything is little steps. one little step at a time. You're not trying to tackle the entire problem at once. You're trying to do little steps to get you to another little step, to get you to another little step, to eventually get you there. And I know that we talked about conventional wisdom earlier, and don't let the way that you used to do it get in the way of how you should be doing it. Don't let your conventional wisdom stop you from getting unconventional results. So whether this is something that happens within your organization, it's a problem of your process or your own personal process, either way, you need to break away from the momentum of how you used to do things and change that so that you can be open to new business ideas, new challenges, and new habits. And the last one here is guided mastery. There's always someone out there that knows something that you don't know yet. Find those people, learn from them, whether it's a DIY on a website somewhere or a YouTube video or someone that you know within your connection. Learn from their experience, tag along with them, try and learn as much as you can because you'll learn quicker, more that way. And when you deepen the relationship with others, you get a better transfer of information. And the next one, to kind of go on the idea of positivity and achieving greater things, was Adrian Gostick with the carrot principle. And what I really liked about this one is that it was all about positivity and identifying what motivates people to do a really great job. And the one thing that he focused on in the beginning, obviously we talk about millennials now in the workplace, is what motivates millennials. And what they found was that these three things were at the top of their list. It was impact on what they're doing, the ability to learn and advance themselves, as well as their family. What was low on the order was autonomy, ownership, and money. And money was assuming if they hit a minimum level, that they were relatively stable. And so it kind of shows that you need to understand what is going to impact the workers that you have and how can you appropriately motivate them to do a really great job. And when you're trying to find those workers that are going to do a great job, don't just go for people who are going to say yes, but go for those positive radicals. And those are the people that are going to really challenge the status quo. They're going to try and bring really great new ideas in, change process, but change it for a really good way. And they're not trying to drag the company down, but inject new and great ideas. Another item that he talked about was that not only do you need to find out how to motivate people, but you need to deliver positive feedback when it's appropriate. So he found out that in high-performing teams, the rate at which team members gave each other positive feedback to negative feedback was 5-to-1. Compared that to low-performing teams that gave 0.36-to-1 positive to negative feedback. They're telling people negative things more than they're telling them positive throughout the entire day. So change that and tell your team on a more regular basis what they're doing well. It doesn't have to be just from management, but from peer-to-peer as well. And when you do it, to follow the principle of now, often, and specific and sincere. When you give feedback, give it right when it matters, give it daily, align the feedback with the core values of the company, and be true and sincere when you do it. Because when you have great teams, they're more willing to speak up and challenge traditional business practices so that you can achieve those unconventional results. And with that, I believe we're moving into the breakout sessions.
All right, and Maggie, I think you are back up.
Yep. So next we're going to talk about Kyle Braun, the president of the Staffing and Recruiting Group at Career Builder. This session was called Future Forward, Staffing Trends to Keep You Competitive in 2018 and Beyond. So this session is one of the most challenging for me to summarize because it was so packed with important data and insights. So please bear with me while I try to hit on some of those highlights. Kyle shared that 45% of employers have jobs they can't fill because they can't find qualified talent, and 58% report that they have jobs that stay open for 12 weeks or longer. 51% of companies surveyed say they plan to use contract employees, which is a gain over 47% just a few years ago. The key areas of hiring are in skilled labor, data analysis, digital marketing, cybersecurity, automation, and artificial intelligence and machine learning. 76% of both staffing clients and candidates think a staffing firm using the most up-to-date technology differentiates them from the competition. Along with that, 7 out of 10 staffing agencies are increasing their investment in technology compared to a year ago, and 72% expect their technology investment to increase over the upcoming year. focusing on job boards, career sites, and applicant tracking systems. Google for Jobs is something that was a recurring theme as well. I know we've touched on it a few times, and Kyle discussed how it is accelerating transparency. It has the potential to change the way employers and candidates are connecting. Google for Jobs is providing more information to candidates about the location of jobs, employer ratings, etc. And this is important because nearly 3 in 4 candidates say that a negative review has a negative impact on their likelihood to apply for an open position. Additionally, the Facebook Jobs Marketplace now reports that 20% of Facebook users are actively looking for job opportunities on Facebook. Finally, he discussed how the skills gap is accelerating in 2018. We need to focus on closing the skills gap. There's an increased investment firms are making in this area. Employers are now hiring with the intent of needing to train in order to give people the skills they need for success in a role. 2 years ago, 32% of companies said they were willing to hire workers that needed training. Last year, 55% said they were willing to hire workers needing training. And in 2018, 66% of employers are hiring workers who need training and are investing in on-the-job training to make those individuals successful. A few of the Haley marketing team members attended a session dedicated to addressing this skills gap, and Brad Smith will share some insights on this later in the presentation. So we can jump over to the next session. This session was called Social Forward in an Age of New Media, and I had the opportunity to participate in this panel discussion with a great group of people. The session focused on social for branding, including personal branding, not just branding for your company. Some of the key takeaways were to be engaged and active with a focus on being authentic. You can pre-schedule content, but be sure to spend time engaging with content shared by others that is relevant to your passion. The session also emphasized the importance of taking social activities beyond just being on social, to create SMART goals that allow you to allocate your time into tactics wisely to boost your brand and meet your goals. We also discussed what type of content to share. A focus should certainly be on sharing branded content that will drive traffic back to your website and boost business initiatives. However, there's value in sharing industry resources that are relevant and important to creating your personal voice online and establishing the authenticity people crave in online interaction. Native content on social media is also growing in value, so it's important to mix this in. Rachel from Allegis Group shared the benefit of getting your entire team on board by encouraging the sharing of internal provided content, as well as allowing the team to curate content they feel is relevant that they can all share and engage with. At Allegis, they're using a tool called Everyone's Social for this curation, but you can choose to do this with or without a curation tool. The important thing is to get buy-in and share the data-driven results of your SMART goals. Next, I'll turn things over to Brad.
Thanks so much, Maggie. And before we kind of go off that slide, I just wanted to compliment you on some great ideas that you shared on that panel. I'm obviously a little biased, but I thought you did a wonderful job and shared a lot of value. And just wanted to touch on one question that came up at the end of that panel. And unfortunately, we're still getting this question in 2018 or comment. And the comment was from a staffing firm owner that said he doesn't let his people on social media because he's afraid they're going to get poached and their candidates are going to get poached. And the panel did a wonderful job of nicely addressing this, but I wanted to jump out of my seat and scream, oh my goodness, do you not let your people talk on the phone? You better take away their email address. That's the equivalent of not allowing your people on social media today. It's absolutely crazy. In today's day and age, how can they effectively do their job without having a strong social presence, without building a network, both personally and for the brand and for the company? You're doing your company a big disservice if you don't invest in those tools and show your people how to use social media effectively and efficiently, because it can make all of their other activities, their sales activities and their recruiting activities, that much more fruitful. But bravo, Maggie, on a great job on that panel.
Thanks, Brad.
All right. The panel that I had the pleasure of sitting in on was one that David Stearns was a member of, our CEO here, and was joined by several other very influential people in the industry, Mike from Butler Street, Eric from CDI, and Chris Martin from Randstad Technologies. And what was great about this session is they shared 28 very tactical, simple ideas that staffing companies could bring back and implement right away. Many of the keynotes and some of the other sessions provide nice high-level theory, but this is great because they're actionable items that you can just take back and implement right away. Eric shared one that was particularly a favorite of mine, and he talked about developing a residual referral program. So most companies have some type of referral program. Maybe they pay a bonus for somebody that works a certain number of hours, or pay a flat fee for a referral. Eric took it up a notch, and what they do is they give their existing nurses $1 more an hour for every nurse they refer. So every nurse they refer that gets placed on assignment, they earn an extra $1 an hour by working for their company. He said that it took them from a cost of almost $8,000 to recruit a nurse down below $2,000 to recruit a nurse. That's amazing turnover, and it helps them retain their existing nurses, because those nurses that are referring good people are earning more money and don't want to leave. So great idea all around. Chris shared an interesting idea that I really had never thought of, and he said with your ATS system, there's so many hidden features out there that other companies are using and leveraging, and power users are leveraging, that aren't in the general manual. So by all means, take up the ATS provider on their training, but then get beyond that. Bring in power users, bring in consultants to really teach your team those hidden tips, tools, tactics that can really put you over the edge. Mike from Butler Street had some absolutely amazing ideas for driving ROI, making your internal activities much more effective. And one that I particularly liked that seems like common sense but isn't happening in every firm is creating a call planning worksheet, something that your sales team uses before every single call and walks them through exactly what they should be asking. And Mike pointed out that each sales call, if you average it out, costs about $400 to $700 per call, all in cost. And if you're not planning before that call, that is really expensive. It's inefficient. So make sure that you have a primary objective, make sure you have a secondary objective, make sure you follow the worksheet, and you'll be much more successful. And then the tip that David shared that I really like is looking at your application process, and you need to re-engineer that process. We're at historically low unemployment rates. It's very hard to get candidates in the door, and in many cases, your application is getting candidates in the door and pushing them right back out. And what I mean by that is if your application is too long, if it takes too long to complete, if it's not mobile friendly, people aren't filling it out and they're leaving. We had a client that killed their long, unmobile ATS application form that took 20 minutes to complete. They killed that and replaced it with our simple form, and they went from getting about 20 to 30 resumes a week to 400 resumes in the first day and 8,000 resumes in the first month. So making a simple change like that can have pretty dramatic results. David, anything else you wanted to share from the panel?
Yeah, thanks, Brad. And thanks for taking notes. It was there were so many good ideas flying around, and sitting up on stage, I was expecting to have a notepad or desk in front of me, and they gave me just a chair. So I didn't get to take any notes, but I will say a couple things that stuck out is, and for those on today's call, I can't give you the details. Mike had some amazing tools for helping to forecast your client relationships and being really proactive about looking where do we stand and which clients are at risk. So I would suggest everybody go to Butler Street's website, follow their blog, sign up for their newsletter, and you'll get some really great advice, because Mike's exceptionally good on sales management strategy and business strategy in our industry. And Eric had one really techie tip that stuck out. He called it using a redundant and in your Boolean searches. And again, we don't have this on screen, but the idea was really learning how to teach your recruiters to do search strings in Boolean using ands, ors in how you're searching for people online. He demonstrated how he could turn Google practically into an ATS, rank ordering people's skills in the search results based on keywords he was looking for. So really cool techniques of taking your Google search to an entirely different level by understanding the power of using, in this case it was called a redundant and, looking for the same word two different places in a Boolean string to help Google share the results in the order you want. And the last thing that I shared, which sort of Chris made a comment on, that I was trying to put him out of work, was to recruit for free. There are so many resources available to staffing companies, particularly small to mid-sized staffing companies, through job distributors, through social media, through re-engaging your talent, that cost nothing to use. So if your jobs aren't automatically optimized for Google for Jobs, if they're not automatically being shared with a number of aggregators, if candidates aren't opting in for job alerts and being driven back to your website, if you don't have a process for sharing on social media, you're spending money to recruit, whereas you could be getting candidates for activities that cost zero. So this was a fun panel for me. It was very unlike any other panel I've ever done before, because the facilitator, John Osborne, came to us and said, guys, I want each of you to do 7 tips and I don't want anybody sharing notes. So we literally showed up at the conference not knowing what anybody else was going to present. And it was fascinating because I was the one guy who was from a little organization representing more of the small to mid-sized staffing companies. But just there are so many things that you can learn from studying the big guys. And again, this is why the executive forum is so valuable. All right, let's now transition on and talk about Tom Gimbel and Jason Leverett and Bill Rivard's presentation. Brad.
Thanks, David. This was a really exciting presentation. It talked about the secrets of the fastest growing firms. So what they did is brought in companies that showed up on SAA's fastest growing list consistently. And one is Tom Gimbel from LaSalle Network. And he talked about some of the strategies that they use internally to make sure that they hit this list every year. First and foremost was focusing on total number of candidates interviewed. So they feel that the more candidates they bring through their doors, the proverbial doors, the more successful that they'll be, especially in a candidate-starved market. So they set quotas. They don't care if they're doing interviews via video, telephone, face-to-face. They just want to look at total number of interviews, quality interviews happening. Next, he said that they always focus on hiring internally for sales. So not getting too caught up on the rising stars within the organization, making sure that some sales reps don't have too big of a book of business is very important, and they're always replenishing their sales team. They train them to bring on new clients. That's their goal. With a new salesperson, it's not only managing an existing book of business, they need to bring in new clients, and they incent their sales team differently for bringing on new clients. They have quotas for existing clients, quotas for new clients, and the sales rep is, again, incentivized handsomely for bringing in new clients. And then last, Tom mentioned how important culture is for the organization. And he said who they fire is just about as important as who they hire. And he explained that it's very difficult overcoming a bad culture. It can take months, it can take years to overcome a bad culture. So if you have somebody in your organization that is bringing others down, if you don't do something about it, if you don't get them out of that position, out of that spot, they're going to bring others around them down. So evaluate that closely. Next was Jason Leverett, and he was had some different ideas. He is the CEO of At Work, and they're a staffing franchise company, a very successful, fast-growing staffing franchise company. And he took the perspective of looking at every single process that you have, from small, minute processes to very complicated processes, and look for ways to improve everything. If you're looking at a process and you feel like it can't be improved, look harder. There's always a way to improve that process. If it isn't broken, look and find something that could be improved slightly. He also focused on building replicatable processes. So process is great, but look for ways that you can continue to replicate that, improve upon it, and use some of those processes in other areas. And he said that they've been able to run an average of 2 to 3 points higher than others in their space because of their processes. Their time to collect is 28 days compared to the average of 45 days. So building all of these things into their process, all of these efficiencies in their process, has helped them become faster to market, help them drive down margins, help them be more profitable. And that's really how they're growing. And then finally, Bill Rivard, they work with government contracts in healthcare, so completely different space. And in that market, they get a 20% markup on healthcare, not very high margins at all. So they need to be extremely, extremely efficient. So what they did is they created an MSP for the government healthcare staffing sector. And they really focus on improving their talent supply chain process on both ends. So they want to make it as simple as possible for candidates and also as simple as possible for clients and their middle suppliers. So even when their suppliers maybe aren't needed, where they could fill the position on their own, they will give them open recs, they will give them assignments to keep them higher, keep them happy, because they know that their talent supply chain requires great providers. They're 100% virtual company. They've eliminated all barriers. And because of these processes, they've had almost 2,000 job orders. They failed to fill 3. So talk about great results. The next panel that I had an opportunity to sit in on talked about beating the skills mismatch. So this is a biggie, right? We're all faced with issues in matching talent to opportunity. There are skill shortages across the board, just about every industry. And these were 4 companies that have done some interesting things to overcome that. Now, Ryan Craig from University Ventures isn't a staffing company, they're a venture firm, and they've actually invested in Reviture, which is a placement firm. So University Ventures looks at themselves as a fix to the broken collegiate and university model. They feel that it's overpriced. It's not equipping our students with applicable knowledge. It's not getting them ready to enter their workforce. And they feel like they're the last mile of education. They're not saying that they're completely replacing that, but they're making sure that the theoretical knowledge learned by people becomes practical knowledge through tightening that skills gap, offering training in place of that overpriced and broken model. Now, Reviture incorporated this model. They were a IT staffing company, traditional IT staffing company. They've replaced their model completely. Now what they do is they bring in and they train talent internally for very specific positions. They make it a large contract from an organization. They'll build a training plan around that. They're requiring 2-year talent contracts from people. So they're providing this training and this practical knowledge for free, but that candidate has to commit to 2 years on that assignment. And they've been so successful that a lot of their clients have actually come to them and pulled their full-time employees out of work and sent them through this training program, because the people that Reviture are providing are that much more efficient and productive than the staff that they already had. So great model. Anthony from Health Trust, they're a healthcare MSP. And what they found was that they were able to hire nurses and bring them out of nursing schools, but they didn't have any applied or technical knowledge. So they're owned by a very large healthcare company, and they've actually created their entire their own training and create their own nurses. So they pull nurses out of their healthcare programs, new grads, and they send them through this applied and technical training. And now they're able to even sell their training services to other healthcare systems. And he did caution that this is a long time in the making. They're finally at a point where they're producing some great turnaround and great revenue, but it's a big commitment. They have curriculum planners on staff, they have trainers on staff, they have auditors on staff. It's a big undertaking, but now it fuels their recruitment function. And finally, Randy Hatcher from MAU Workforce. And I thought this was really applicable and something that many people on this call could take a look at. Randy is in light industrial staffing and looked at several of his clients not being able to find some of the skilled talent that they need. So Randy said, hey, let me just mimic your floor setting. And he went out and got a warehouse in the back of his company. He rented the equipment that his top clients had in their facilities. He got a forklift, and he created a mock semi-truck in this warehouse, and he is teaching people forklift driving. He's teaching people machinery. He's walking them through all the things that they're going to do on the job site. So when they show up at his clients, they've already had very specific training on the exact equipment at the client facility. And the client now pays while the candidate is in training. So he's providing better fit talent, the client's paying all throughout the process, and it's a win-win situation. All right, the next session I sat in on, which was a big topic at the Executive Forum this year, was the topic of AI, artificial intelligence. And can we really use AI in recruiting? And yes, we can, but as Ted Elliott from Job Science noted, AI really doesn't necessarily exist yet, but there are some elements within the concept of AI that can really help immediately, and some things that we need to look out for in the future. So Ted mentioned that they did a year-long study, and they looked at data, they looked at trends, they tried to use predictive analytics to figure out some patterns, and what they found was interesting. And Ted actually got in kind of a little back and forth with one of the attendees there, and Ted pretty much said, if you don't place a candidate within 30 days and you don't fill a job order within 30 days, flush it out of your system, get rid of that data, delete that record, it's useless. And the entire audience gasped and said, no way, then our recruiting database is our bread and butter. That's how we make our money. And Ted said, no, it's not. If it's older than 30 days and you haven't placed that person, it's trash. You're never gonna place them. You're wasting your time. This went back and forth, but the data suggests that Ted's right. Recency is the key. So when a candidate comes in your door, when a job order comes in your door, if you're not filling it and you're not doing everything that you can in those first 30 days to match that, move on. Okay. They found that the most successful companies are placing people very, very quickly. He also looked at salary data, public data, and some interesting things came out of that. They looked and found that if the cost of living in an area was over 30% of that job's salary, you will never place anyone in that position. Stop wasting your time. That's interesting insight to give back to an employer if they have a low pay rate, and also interesting information to give to your salespeople so that they don't bring in junk orders. And he suggested using stats like this and combing through your database and combing through your data to look for patterns. He also suggested that the traditional metric of call volume should be thrown out the window. Your jobs, as we mentioned, your jobs and your candidates have a shelf life. They have a half-life, and there's a time cycle on them. So instead of looking at call volume, look at how quickly they're placing a candidate that was just interviewed on assignment. Okay. Look for patterns, look for reps that can place that person in the first week, in the first 10 days. Those are the reps that are going to be much more successful and drive more revenue, instead of the person that's combing through databases and combing through resume databases and looking at old records. Focus on the new, and you're going to make a lot more money that way. And again, the takeaway value here is look for patterns. Pattern your best recruiters, pattern your best salespeople, and then compare that to the patterns of your lowest performing salesperson. You're going to find interesting trends that you can learn from and improve in your organization. And with that said, Brian, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thanks, Brad. We're going to get into a few of my favorite panels here, and it really ties together everything we've been talking about throughout this throughout this webinar so far. And the very first one was Richard Altus at People 2.0 talking about how to grow your company from a small to a mid-sized staffing company. And specifically, he was referencing either 5 to 10 million or 20 to 25 million. And this one was a really, really long session, so I kind of condensed it a little bit here to make it a little more applicable to, I think, what everyone wants to hear. And the one thing that I found that was really important is that Richard believed that in order to provide a really good experience to your clients, you need to make sure that from the top to the bottom in your workforce that they understand the company's vision. And I really like that because it speaks to making sure that you're delivering a product that works for your company and works for your clients. So making sure that the company's leadership is visible to all employees, that the vision, the business plan, the current service offerings, they should all be visible to every single employee in the company, as well as the team should be buying into and supporting that overall vision. And the next thing that he talked about in terms of trying to grow your company is that the lack of true differentiators hinders growth for staffing companies. And I might get a few people angry here when I say this, but good service is not a differentiator. Doing something different, whether it's your niche or whether it's something else that differentiates you, how you specialize your company can help you win your business away from a competitor. And think about if a competitor tries to steal your client, why does your client want to work with you instead? And this goes to the next one. It says brag about your clients. You really believe that you should showcase your best clients and let everyone know who they are and who you're working with. And I've told this to people before, and they always gasp and say, I don't want anyone to know who I'm working with. Well, the reality is if your competitors knowing the name of your clients is all that stops them from taking your business, then there's an opportunity for you to deepen your relationship with your clients and present a more consultative role that your company can have. Rely on differentiators, become part of their business, and really provide solutions that makes your recruiters more than just order placers. So that was a really nice thing that I enjoyed about Richard Altus's presentation. For the next presentation, it was a panel discussion between, can we get to the next, there we go. The next between, and this one I actually really liked, was Voice of the Customer. And where they have three really big companies, in this case Thomson Reuters, BP, and Blue Cross Blue Shield, went on stage and talked to the audience about what they really like and what they see from their perspective as a buyer of staffing services. And the one thing, going back to what's your differentiator, they really believe that have your differentiator and stick to it, stand by it. These companies that get that get different solicitations that are sometimes tens, if not hundreds of different people for a single open position for to service that company, a lot of them sound exactly the same. So what do you actually have different? And play that up, stick to it, and make it a big differentiator for your company. And when creating your differentiator or refining that differentiator, make sure that it's something that actually applies to the clients that you're going after, not just a differentiator that you'd like to have or you think that's important, but actually have a differentiator that works really well for your client base that you're trying to sell to. And that goes into the idea of understanding the difference between a tool and a strategy and how you present your services to a staffing company. And are you just trying to fill a position, or are you trying to be consultative and help that company out? Another thing that they said is that if you're on the vendor list already, don't just sit there. Don't just fill orders because you're there and you feel like you're safe. Take that opportunity when you have the ear of a hiring manager or you have the ear of someone within the company. Take that and try and build a better relationship and try to build a stronger relationship that is more than just filling joborders.com. Now, they did recognize, especially with the last item here, that talking to a hiring manager may not always be possible, that there is certainly some limitations and some agreements that limit your ability to actually talk to anyone in a facility sometimes, especially with really large companies. But if it's possible, certainly exploit it and certainly take advantage of it, because that will help you stay top of mind for that hiring manager. It helps keep you on the vendor list over time and makes you more valuable to them because you might be consulting with them instead of just filling job orders. And the last one here, because I work so much with the job board here at Haley Marketing, I absolutely loved. We had a panel discussion between Dave Tuttle of ZipRecruiter, Chris Cho, and Carmen Bryant of Monster and Indeed. And they went through some really fantastic data on where they see the job aggregators going in the future and how it's going to work for all of our clients out there and all of you that are listening. And the one thing that I found to be the absolute most shocking thing, and why I wanted to share it at the top, is that the number one search term is, I didn't miss it, I didn't leave it out here, it's actually blank. So on these sites, the number one thing that people search for is nothing. So moving forward, how are you, or how is a job board trying to find better ways to match these candidates with jobs that they really are going to succeed at? And how can you turn a blank search into a successfully placed candidate? So a perfect example of this is everyone here is, or I'm sure everyone here is familiar with Netflix, and has the ability to recommend shows based on not just your preferences, but what Netflix has learned about people that are like you, and they're able to serve TV shows and movies that based on that. And that's kind of where this may be going in the future for staffing companies, where when a candidate uploads their information, where is it able to match them to jobs that they'd be a great fit for? Is there a shortage in an industry that you might have a great fit for a candidate that the system will automatically notice and push them over to? It's also a great opportunity for staffing companies to be more consultative, learn about your candidates, learn about their skills, learn about what they're good for, and maybe place them in a job that they didn't exactly come looking for when they went to your company. Another one is that a candidate comes and looks for a job just about every 3 years, and that time frame is actually compressing. So it's getting less and less than 3 years now. So it's very important to make sure, this kind of goes against a little bit of what the job science data said, but although he was about candidates that could not be placed. But people that you have placed, make sure you're re-engaging with them. You're sending them email, you're sending them content, you're reaching out to them with new job opportunities, because they are going to become active again in the talent pool in about 3 years. And in a time where there's a candidate shortage, if you have someone that likes you and you've already given them a great job, they're a great resource to go back to when they're looking for a new job. They also had the opinion that the pay-per-click job posting sites are going away. So that's kind of a little bit scary for these companies to be saying, but that's one thing that they did say. Another thing that they talked about, and it's not on the, the next one here is keyword searches, is that they don't believe that the keyword search that we're familiar with when using ATSs or using these job board aggregate sites, they're not really friendly for candidates. They work really well for us, they work really well for you, but they don't really work well for candidates. So trying to find, going forward, what is a better way to take what is effectively a keyword search and mesh that more with candidate ability. So that's something that they're considering. And the last thing that I'm a huge fan of is content is king. Content is a lot more for a job seeker beyond a job posting. Think about how your staffing company positions your company to candidates, the ads they see, the blog posts they read, the texts that they get, the calls that they get from your recruiters. All these things with white papers, salary guides, on the job guides, startup guides that your candidates and new employees read. This all helps brand your company and makes them want to work with you again in the future, and makes them more likely to call you when they're looking for a job in that 2 to 3 year period. So make the experience as enjoyable as you can. Make sure the knowledge transfer is enjoyable and beneficial to both sides as much as you can, and it should hopefully lead to more business in the long run.
Thanks, Brian.
And that's all I have.
And I have the wrap-up breakout presentation to share. This one was from Barry Asen and Mike Cleland. And Barry and Mike got together and they just wrote a new book. I'm about halfway through it right now. It's really good. It is all about how you can make your staffing company break through. So after this webinar ends, get on Amazon and get a copy. Barry and Mike will not only appreciate it, you'll learn a lot. But they talked about the phases of growth for staffing firms. And most of us, when we start our companies, maybe we left another organization or maybe a small team is starting a company, you start up as an organization that's really dependent on the owner-operator. And some companies never get beyond that. Of the 19,000 staffing companies, something like 15,000 are still less than $1 million a year in sales. So they're owner-operator dependent. They never get to the next level of where they're truly running an independent operation. The independent operation is the level where you're successful, you have a management team, the business can grow, but it's not dependent on the network of the owner to bring in every new piece of business. A lot of companies do make that first level to the independent operation. However, the next one is organic scale. And that's when you go from $3, $5, $10 million to 25, 50, $100 million. And that's when you start opening more offices. You start developing niche market focus. You find a way to build more repeatable processes, and you professionalize your management. This is a tough level for a lot of organizations. Owners don't like to give up control. It's difficult to build teams. It's difficult to hire and retain staff. You never find anybody who does it as well as you do. And so a lot of organizations never make it to the level of organic scale. But those who do usually see very rapid growth up to a certain point where now it's difficult to continue to grow, because if you've been growing at 10, 20, 30% a year, once you get to be 50, 75, $100 million, that 10, 20, 35% growth is really hard to replicate. And that's when those organizations need to switch to a strategic expansion, which is thinking about how do we take on new market segments? How do we go on and develop an acquisition strategy? How do we develop new service offerings to really make the business continue to scale? And those are the organizations that cross through $100 million and beyond. So what Mike and Barry talked about is there are 5 disciplines you must have to be a top performing staffing firm. And the book is about these 5 disciplines. The first is a real commitment to growth, that growing your business is a strategic priority. It factors into how you do all your plans and make all your decisions. And every business owner I've ever met talks about wanting to grow, but there's a difference between wanting to grow and making it a priority, and what you reinvest in the company and the risks you're willing to accept to focus on growth. But just being committed isn't enough. The second discipline is to have direction, a clear winning strategy that you've put into place, how you're going to grow, and then making sure that you put in place all of the resources to implement that strategy, the people, the technology, the processes, and you train and explain to everybody what that strategy is all about. So top to bottom, sort of as Brian was talking about, everybody knows the direction of the organization, where you're going, what you're trying to achieve, and how you're going to get there. And that leads right into building a culture. And that culture doesn't happen by accident. In the fastest growing companies, culture is intentional, and culture is focused on performance. And the book goes into great length about how to build a culture around performance, how performance tends to beget more people who are driven by performance, and it forces out the people who are not willing to perform. For me, one of the biggest take-homes, though, actually was the 4th discipline, which was talent development. And that if you're going to grow organically, you're going to hit that organic scale, you have to be developing your own leaders. I heard several executives talk about trying to bring in executives from the outside, and the failure rates they cited of 75 to 90% blew me away. I'm like, wow, I would never have thought it's so hard to hire really talented managers. And these people are saying, yeah, they don't fit the culture. They may have great ability, but it's not necessarily great ability for our organization. And our most successful leaders are people we developed. But the people who were on a panel with Barry and Mike, all of them had a very defined plan for hiring, training, and developing the next generation of leadership. And finally, it's about execution. Having great plans, having great commitment, having a great culture means nothing if you don't have the ability to consistently execute. And that means making sure your sales team, your recruiting teams are enabled to do what they need to do. They're monitored, the metrics are driven to ensure performance, and that you've built repeatable processes that are scalable so you can grow your business. I will also comment that when I heard Mike present, I got really excited, so I ran right up to Mike afterwards and said, hey, Mike, you may have heard we have a podcast called Secrets of Staffing Success, where we interview owners of staffing companies to find out what makes them tick, and sometimes we also interview industry experts. Mike was nice enough to agree to be on a upcoming podcast, and we're going to be interviewing him next week for a podcast that will be coming up, I think, in 6 or 8 weeks. So if you have not already listened to Secrets of Staffing Success, please go to iTunes or Spotify or Google Play or whatever your favorite podcast source is, or just go to our website and go to the freebies and look at the podcast section, and you can listen to all the episodes of Secrets of Staffing Success. All right, guys, we've come to the end, and actually we went a little over time, but not as bad as I thought we were going to do. So let's talk about some of our top take-homes. Now, first up is Ryan, and Ryan apologizes for not being here. We scheduled this without checking in Ryan's schedule, and Ryan had to be in for a little surgical procedure today. He's recovering well and hopefully be back in the office soon. But some of the lessons that Ryan learned, first and foremost, the HR is back. This is nice because we had seen more and more staffing going to procurement and really being more about a purchasing function. And the HR is back is really nice because our clients are more focused on getting the job done, and the role of HR in being a provider, a sourcer, manager of talent, and being a problem solver. So for everybody on today's call, that's a great opportunity because it's not going to be just be about price. It's not going to be just be markup discussions. Yes, those aren't going away, but now they're going to be more discussions about talent strategy. The old triangle of cost, quality, speed, differentiators, they may be shifting. Speed being the first, flexibility and convenience being the next two. As our time available to get things done, the pressure on getting things done faster, the time we have available trumps cost. One of the things that I've been touting for all of our staff here at Haley Marketing is really everybody's so busy that anything that you can do that makes process easier to buy, easier to work with you, easier to be a consumer, that's going to be successful. And the same thing goes in your business and staffing. It's not just about cost, quality, speed. Speed is vitally important because people are making a lot of decisions at the last minute, but it's about that flexibility and convenience. How easy are you to work with? Ryan's fourth take home was that job descriptions need to reflect output. It's not the here's what you need to do, it's the here's what you need to do for me. So really rewriting job descriptions, getting your clients to rewrite job descriptions based on goals, not duties. The more you can write based on goals, it creates clarity for the candidate. It can get them excited about what their real contribution is going to be, and it also differentiates your job post, which will attract more people to your jobs. And finally, Brian said earlier, service isn't a differentiator, and Ryan's take home is that diversity isn't a differentiator. We see this with a lot of clients that might be WeBank certified, and they want to really make their certification as a focal point of their differentiation. And several people on panel discussions, I saw this one as well, talked about diversity is a value, and it is something that they appreciate, but it doesn't make the buyer want to work with you. It's about the speed, the flexibility, the convenience, the quality first. The differentiator, all things being equal, if you've got diversity, it's there, but differentiator won't get you in the door. All right, Maggie, how about your take-homes?
I had a lot of awesome takeaways from the executive forum, but I just want to focus on one key lesson that is on more of a personal note. So the one takeaway that really stuck with me was from a conversation with Bill Wood of Wood Personnel Services. He shared the theory from the book The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins, which focuses on courage and discusses how you can essentially talk yourself into or out of anything in 5 seconds. The book shares the method of counting down backwards from 5 to 1 and then launching into your activity without fear and full of confidence. I thought it was an incredible takeaway that can be applied to many experiences in life. Rather than wasting time being nervous or worrying, take 5 seconds to calm yourself and take action. So thanks to Bill for sharing this with me. I really enjoyed that. And there were a lot of other awesome takeaways. I outlined some of them on the slide here, but that's the one I really wanted to focus on. So Brad, you're up next.
Thanks, Maggie.
Terrific. Thanks, Maggie. My first takeaway is that great leadership can catapult an organization and an entire industry. So as everyone on this call, what you do in your own individual organizations and how you lead your organizations can have a big impact on the industry as a whole. Look to streamline, look to build inefficiencies, look to drive more value, look to empower your people and give them the training they need to be successful. Next, companies that streamline and automate their processes will win. We found several examples of companies that have automated recruiting, that have automated skill matching, and they're extremely successful, and they're positioning themselves for the next generation of staffing and recruiting agencies. Next is in a candidate-starved market, you might need to make your own candidates. And we saw examples of that with MAU Workforce on the light industrial side, Reviture on the high-skill IT side. Think about ways that you can train your temp contractors and really build your own talent pool. And last, people don't understand AI, but they're scared, they're excited, they're overzealous, they're cautious, paranoid, afraid, just about any adjective you can throw in there. But I think the key takeaway is don't ignore it. Don't think that the staffing industry isn't going to advance. Don't think that you can't automate what you do. Don't think that you can't be replaced. Once you think you can't be replaced is just about the time when you can be replaced. So think about all those things and look for ways to use AI, data analytics, advanced metrics to identify ways that you can improve, drive more value, and position yourself as an expert.
Thanks, Brad. And Brian.
Thanks, David. And for me, this is also my very first executive forum, just like Maggie. But my big takeaways were consult, and then certainly consult some more. As your clients get more and more competition for other staffing companies, as there are more options for online or different app-based staffing companies, the push for your company to be more consultative, be more of a strategic partner with them, and provide more value than just transactional will be even more important. So always keep that in mind. In that same regard, differentiation, develop it, leverage it, and take pride in it. Your company is who you are, and you've been successful so far. So find out what has really made your company tick, what's made your profits go up, and really leverage that, and especially when you're doing your consulting. And the last one I really want to highlight, just like Brad said, always look forward to the future for innovation opportunities to grow. This industry is always going to keep going forward. There are new technologies, whether it's AI or app-based or something else we don't even know about yet. Look for what is going to be coming in the future. Is your company looking for what's going to be happening tomorrow, today, or in a year from now? And are you looking to react to that? So those are my big takeaways.
Thanks, Brian. All right, and for the last bit of sharing from the executive forum, my take-homes. First thing is that staffing automation is real and you need to plan. One of the panel discussions that sort of blew me away was a gentleman from True Blue Staffing was talking about online staffing and how his branch managers completely did not believe it would have any impact on their business. And then I think it was last Thanksgiving Eve, one of their clients at 4:45 calls and says, we need 25 people tonight, the night before Thanksgiving. Now, in this office, everybody had already left to go do a little holiday celebrating, and the manager in the office was still behind, so he, in a panic, starts calling all of his recruiters to come back in and starts helping him source these 25 people needed that night. And as he's in the process of trying to call all his recruiters back, the client calls back and says, never mind, I filled all the orders. This was 19 minutes later. And this manager goes, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I wish we could have served you. And the client goes, you did serve me. I used your online app. The manager did not believe clients would use the technology to do self-service. The client did it, filled all the orders in 19 minutes. That scared me. If it doesn't scare you, it should. So you have to look at the fact that the big guys are investing heavily in creating these platforms. And are you going to compete with them? Are you going to adopt online staffing? You need a plan. The next one take home for me is there's no one right way to be successful. During Mike and Barry's presentation, listening to the owners of some of the fastest growing staffing companies in the industry, all of them did it differently. The one common thread was they had this commitment, a real commitment to growth. Top to bottom, everybody was focused on what do we do to outrun, outpace, outperform our competition. Related to that was the idea of developing leaders. It's painful, it's expensive, but you can't grow if the business hinges on one manager or the owner or a couple of key people. If you don't develop the next generation of talent, you're going to tap out your ability to grow your firm. As I mentioned earlier, hiring leaders from the outside is extremely risky. That was a take-home for me that was a big surprise. I kind of always assumed, as you're a bigger organization, you can bring in star performers and help them enhance what you do. And while that is true, hearing people say 75 to 90% of their outside leaders fail, those are high-cost people. And when they fail, they don't just do damage to their job, they do damage to teams, departments, client relationships, and sometimes entire companies. It's risky. So it goes back to that third bullet, focus on developing talent. Kind of building on what Brian said about differentiation. Position yourself as an expert at what you do and who you serve. Find that niche you can own. The more tightly you define the market, the easier it is to stand out, the easier it is to demonstrate your expertise and your value, and the less likely it is that you will be displaced by staffing automation. And then a last one that wasn't just from the executive forum, but was from talking to some of our clients, and I'm sure this happens to you. It doesn't often happen to us, but I heard that it was happening. Competitors lie, and we heard some tales being told about Haley marketing services that were 100% wrong. They were based on presumptions, not fact, and I'm sure this happens to you guys. Your competitors don't really know what you do, so they make assumptions, they tell stories, they do things to position themselves in the best light. It's a reality. You can't stop your competitors' salespeople from lying about you, but then you need a strategy. How do we deal with it? You need to know what they're saying. You need to know your competitors' business as well as you know your own to build the right game plan for doing things for yourself ethically, honestly, fairly, and effectively. All right, and that said, bear with me 1 second. It looks like my screen sharing temporarily paused. Let's just wrap it up. We will stay on the line for a little bit if anybody has questions, and while we're doing that, I want to thank everybody for sticking around with us. We knew this would be a long webinar. If you want to catch up with it, we have recorded it, and the recording will be available at our lunchwithhaley.com website early next week. And speaking of next week, coming up on Tuesday, we're doing a product demo webinar of our all-inclusive staffing website. So if you're thinking about a new webinar, or thinking about a new website, not a webinar, or you're just not getting quite the performance, the return on investment from the site that you have, come check out what we're talking about, whether you need a new website or not. We'll be showing off lots of really cool tools that are included in our new all-inclusive website. And then coming up next month, we're going to be talking about smart marketing ideas and taking a look at the strategies that staffing companies can be using to enhance every aspect of marketing. We're going to touch on key things that you should be doing in all different areas of sales support, recruitment marketing, branding, digital marketing, search engine optimization, websites, etc. So I hope you'll join us for our product demo webinar next week and our Smart Marketing Ideas webinar next month. You can reserve your seat at lunchwithhaley.com.